Good morning, lovely ladies, and thank you for being our guests today.
Oh, thank you so much for having us. It's just such a pleasure to be here.
Super excited to have found you. And this is what I say when I find my amazing guests is like, I actually can't remember how I found you, but it usually is Instagram and you know, the scroll, like, oh, look at these amazing people. So yeah, thank you so much. Very excited to have you here. Thank you, Alex and Belle. So what I always like to say when we get started is to sort of explain your elevator pitch, what you do, and then we sort of go from there.
Yeah, I can start.
Mhm.
Um, we are two pediatric occupational therapists, and we are kind of experts in toilet training. So we want to
You
make toilet
are.
training, yeah, we want to make toilet training really simple for families.
Mm.
And we've made some resources that kind of support kids to teach themselves. They get to watch a little animation and read a story about themselves with their own picture in those resources, that teach them how to use the toilet.
Amazing. That's so
Yeah.
fantastic. So, and this is where we go to the passion, because again, every time I have my beautiful guests, it's usually come from somewhere in your heart, a passion, a glimmer of like, this is really something that we need to support families with. And, my children are teenagers. It only feels like yesterday that we were potty training, honestly.
Mhm.
But why do you feel, or probably not a why, your OTs, very
Mhm.
important for lots of reasons, helping lots of families with lots of different things. Where was the drive to sort of get specialized in toilet training? So what I'm sort of meaning is, do you feel like over the last sort of 5 to 10 years, it's becoming harder for the kiddos or the parents, everyone's working so much that it's harder? Like, have you sort of, yeah, what
Do you
made you
know?
sort of decide? Yeah.
mm, I think that, how it's so interesting. I think so many businesses are born out of a person's personal experience. So I
Totally.
know I'm a mum of four
Mm.
really awesome little
Mhm.
humans, and I was actually
Go,
toilet
mum.
training. Yeah, thank you. My number four child, and I'm an OT, and I
Yeah.
toilet trained three kids before that, hundreds of kids before that.
Mm.
But I got to her and it just wasn't working. It just
Yeah.
wasn't going to plan, and she wasn't on board with it. And we
Do you think it's because
tried.
it's a fourth? She's like, yeah, not
Well,
far. Yeah.
well, I did kind of hope that she would just do it herself, because I think we all secretly hope that we'd have that unicorn child that
Yeah.
just works it out themselves. And that
No.
wasn't our experience.
Yeah.
And then finally, with all of my other kids and with every family that I've ever worked with, and I know that's the same with Alex, we make personalized stories
Oh, it's
for
so
kids to be
beautiful.
able to read and learn about going to the toilet, and they're in the picture. And these are
So good.
really, and they're very cool. And I hadn't done it
Mhm.
for my daughter because I'm like, I don't have the time. I
Yeah.
don't have the energy. I just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And then when things were just not working, I
And can
finally
I,
made,
sorry to
yeah,
interrupt. Can I ask there?
mm,
Sorry to interrupt, but because
yeah,
otherwise I'll forget.
mm,
What did that look like for you? Meaning
mm,
you had the three, you got the
mhm,
fourth, you're an
yep,
OT, you know
yep.
what to do. What did that
Mhm.
look like for you as a mum where you were saying she just wouldn't do it or it wasn't happening? Like, yeah, could you deep dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So she would sit on the toilet or potty, but it would be like bouncing on off.
Okay.
In like I'd be there for a second and I'm
Yeah.
bouncing off again. She didn't want to do it. There were times when we're just trying to practice the sit, she would get really distressed
Okay.
and really upset around even wanting to practice sitting on the toilet. And we know that that's a really important first step, getting kids confident, comfortable
Yeah.
sitting on the potty or toilet. I had the
Totally.
equipment all set up.
Yeah.
We were playing about going to the toilet. We're doing all the things, but it just,
Didn't want to do it.
nah, we were on different pages.
Oh,
And
and do you
so
think it was how old is she now?
she's 5.
Cutie patootie. So do you
Mm-hmm.
think, again, having teenagers and three girls, so they're all different, do you also feel like, again, you'd be seeing this a lot, that that's actually a bit of her personality trait as well, like for other things, or is it just around that toilet training?
No, I look back in hindsight and I really don't even know what it was for
Okay.
her that
Didn't want
why
to do
that
it.
was. Yeah,
Mm.
she didn't. And then so I finally sat down and made her own personalized toilet story. And 2 days later, she sat on the toilet and did her first wee.
Oh,
And
you were like,
Alex and
what?
I, yeah, I'm like, why didn't I do this 6 months ago?
Oh, because you're busy
Um,
and we're in our little bubble of busy, busy.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yes. And then Alex and I were actually on a walk together, and I was talking about how this was my experience. And, I knew what to do. Like, I knew how to make the story, and I knew how to find the right words and find the right pictures and do all the things, but it still felt hard for me. And so Alex and I started this great big dive into how can we make these resources more accessible to other families, and how can we make it even better by making a video that is also personalized with a child's face as well.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I hope you've trademarked this, have you? Oh, no, I shouldn't even bring that up. Okay, well, then
it's in the process.
Okay, we're going to get off the podcast. It's going to be weeks to the podcast is released, so it's going to be trademarked by the time it's released, because it's an incredible idea, and it's been formed, like you said, from your own life skill and stuff, like life experience. Can I also ask, how old was she when you were first trying?
Yeah, so we kind of started sprinkling in the idea when she was 2. She was only just turned 2. Yep. That's when we started, or even she might have even been younger. It's a little while ago now. I can't, but we, from a really young age, we started just trying to get her to practice the toilet sits, and we'd have there would be some days it would go better than others, but when it got to the really juicy time when I really started getting a bit more serious about it, that's when the wheels probably started falling off a bit.
Because I suppose back in the day, that would be really frustrating. I wouldn't even have known what to do. I suppose we would have just thought, oh, maybe she's not ready. Or is that not really, when would be typically, again, this is all statistically, every child's different. Again, it's with sleep and everything I do. I know every child's a little bit different, but we do have those ranges of when's optimum, 90% of kids. When would you say that would be?
Do you want to take that one, Alex?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, probably from around the age of 2, 2 to 3.
Mm-hmm.
We know that that's kind of an age where they are potentially showing interest in the toilet, the communication levels developing a little bit. They might be able to actually stay dry for 2 hours at a time. So when we're noticing that kids are able to kind of stay dry in their nappy, or interested in the toilet, or talking about the toilet, or interested in watching you on the toilet, all of those things are a bit of a readiness sign. So we can watch out for those.
Sure.
And you're right, like that age does vary, especially if children have additional learning needs as well. That can be completely stretched out to 4, 5, 6 and beyond. And sometimes if they're not showing all of those signs, then it's still okay to start and have a go and just start with that like early exposure to the toilet. You don't need to wait for them to all kind of be there and ready to have a go.
Have a poo and have a wee. So again, back in the day, we used to have, it's similar, but there was no fantastic books or anything, but we used to have the gross potty in the living area. Is that the same sort of thing as well? You still sort of, like having a poo or a wee on the potty. Yay, having a wee. You sort of still start with that old traditional way of having that potty in the living, like the area where you're in all the time.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've kind of got a bit of a different perspective on that.
Interesting.
We definitely think that the potty has a place for some kids. We sometimes encourage to actually start with the toilet, considering that, a lot of the children that we work with do have like additional learning needs as well. And sometimes having that double transition is kind of like 2 learning processes.
Sure, yeah.
Like learning how to use the potty and then learning how to use the toilet.
Right.
And if the toilet's set up well enough that it's accessible for a child and they're feeling really safe sitting up there, it's not too much of a hurdle.
Sure.
But we can imagine if it's like this big toilet that their feet are dangling and they kind of feel unsteady, then it can be really intimidating.
They're going to fall in.
But definitely that potty in the living area, because it's so accessible and they can quickly get to it, is a really great kind of pro of starting with the potty.
Yeah, they're both very valid. So then with that, when you're talking about, say, so in our house, it was a storied house, and so there was no toilet on the bottom floor. So that's probably why I did it a little bit as well. So if you've got a house that's all pretty easily accessible, what would a toilet look like environmentally for making them feel safe and all of that? What would be the sort of top few things to have there in the toilet for them to want to go in there?
Such a good question, because we know that the environment and the way that it's set up can make or break a child's experience. So some of the things that we talk about are having the toilet insert seat, so making the hole in the toilet smaller.
Yes.
And so we know that that's great for kids feeling like their little bottoms aren't going to fall in.
Yes.
Having a step, which is lovely and high, so their feet are supported, because what we know is if there's little feet dangling, the postural muscles are going to be starting to activate to hold themselves up there. And what we need to be able to release a wee is to relax. And so if we're contracting, we're definitely not relaxing to allow a wee to come out. So thinking about those, so the toilet insert, and thinking about having a step to stand on. We often even think about the sensory qualities of the bathroom as well, and that for some children, even thinking about, is there a funny smell from the cleaning products, or air fresheners, or having the fan on and off. Some kids don't mind the fan on because it takes away the smells, but other kids, the exhaust fan being on can feel a bit uncomfortable for their bodies, or the temperature of the floor. Like if you're noticing when your little person goes in and they don't like it because it's often quite cool, like the cool tiles on their little tootsies. So we often think about lots of those elements when we're thinking about that good fit for a child.
And I think, like, again, you both being OTs and all the things that I've been through with my children, you know, you've got a lot of kiddos that don't have sensory issues, don't care, you know, and that's awesome, right?
Yeah.
But you've got kiddos that start to show that stress or like screaming, and this is where it's hard as parents. If it just all of a sudden starts to happen, you think, oh, what's going on? There's always something deeper, isn't there? It's not just like they're screaming for no reason, and it might sound ridiculous. It might feel ridiculous for you as a parent, but actually, if you really think, oh, they walk in that toilet, feet go on the tiles, they start getting upset. Rather than go, come on, don't be silly, up your pop, you've got to actually consider that, put a bath mat on and stuff like that. So really, again, being a conscious parenting coach now, it's being aware of all of that stuff, because I was certainly not aware before all of this stuff that is out there to know, you know, and information is fantastic for everybody, but also I'm finding, and I'm sure you're finding in sort of the pediatric industries, whatever position we're in, too much information is just overwhelming for parents, you know, and it's like just keeping it simple, but being aware, you know, which is fantastic. So how long have you had the ebook and the videos in circulation?
Been about nearly a year now, coming up a year. And then a year of development before that. So it's been quite a long journey, and jumping into the kind of like tech world as well is quite different for us.
It's exciting. It's so exciting. So exciting. So happy to share you with everybody. Now, the other big thing when I was talking about just then about overwhelm with too much information, you know, and the pressures as parents is like we're failing. So, for example, you as OT, we wouldn't have thought you were failing, but as a mum, you're like, what's going on? And again, with reality, right? If you have a 2-year-old who doesn't have other underlying sensory issues or sort of any developmental progression issues, how long would you expect? You're like, would you give yourself a year? Would you give yourself 6 months? Like, I think people, again, expect it to be done and then they're never going to have an accident again, or like, oh, it's been a week and we've gone out and they've weed their pants. You know, what sort of would be a realistic expectation for parents in their starting to begin potty training to maybe it working?
Oh, this is a really good question, because I think the way that Alex and I break toilet training down is that we talk about this get ready, get set, go phase. How can we, before we try and get kids to go, how can we get them ready? How can we set the environment? How can we get all of that juicy stuff done before we go? We're going to try really have a go at getting the wee on the toilet.
Yes.
And so we know that preparation phase can actually be like months long, because and it's okay that it's months long, because it's also about parent readiness, that I'm going, oh, you know I should start to think about toilet training, but all I've got in my energy reserves at the moment is to practice some toilet sits, to do a bit of playing about going to the toilet. I'm going to I'm going to narrate what I feel when I need to go as a parent, and that's all I've got. That's all the energy I've got at the moment. And I still call that toilet training. You're still working towards that end goal of getting the wee on the toilet. Absolutely. And I think the parents who do all of that kind of preparation phase, that really sets the kids up to be able to get the wee on the toilet.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I'm just thinking. I've never really been asked a time frame.
Oh, and again, it's too hard for me to say. Look, it's a bit of a tricky question, but I suppose where I'm always coming from is trying to not put so much pressure on the parents. Like you just said, this is slow. I can't do it this week. I can't do it today. I can do it on the weekend. I think trying to have the expectations to parents is like, it's not fast. It's not quick. It's not fast. Yeah. And you're not failing if you haven't been able to do it all week. That's what I think. And again, working with so many parents all the time, again, on reflection, when I was a young mum, is women not only want to go back to work, if they've worked hard for a career, they have to, because the life is so expensive. So then we're talking about things like potty training at daycare and things like that. So again, it's a bit like sleep. We get really great sleep at home, and then the parents worry that it's going to get messed up from daycare. But often in my sleep world, or always, kiddos, no matter how old they are, can differentiate between daycare and home, right? And so they can still get great success at home, even though daycare might be not so great. So what's your thoughts on that with daycare in regards to potty training? Is it a bit like monkey see, monkey do? Like, everybody else is doing it, so they're like, well, I'll give it a go? Or what's your thoughts on kiddos having to go to daycare a lot?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that peer modeling, if there's other kids kind of doing it, or it's just part of their routine, like they're actually, encouraged to go to the toilet at certain times, and everyone walks through the toilet and has a go, is definitely really helpful for the kids that maybe aren't so keen at home.
Yeah.
If you do have a bit of a strategy going at home, it's really helpful to inform educators at daycare, just to let them know what your plan is, and actually we're just going every couple of hours or 20 to 30 minutes after they have their food or their drink. Do you mind just encouraging them to sit on the toilet and make it really fun? And the capacity of childcares will vary, but having that consistency is really helpful.
Yeah, and it's the same as sleep, isn't it, really? Just being communicate with the daycare. So the other thing that I really wanted to talk about as they get a bit older is bedwetting, or you are the professionals with this, but parents get quite caught up because they've been very well toilet trained during the day, dry, and I don't know, maybe 4 or whatever, and still in a nappy. I can't remember, exactly. But I've just sort of said, again, because I didn't know you guys, that it's not a problem to have pull-ups until they're reasonably dry at night. Or can you run through the expectations of, again, possible age, bedwetting? Again, it's probably pretty broad, but the expectations around that.
Like, it's still considered to be really normal up until 5 or 6 for kids to still need pull-ups overnight. Because what we're waiting for is basically parts of our body to develop, and so it's still considered normal 5, maybe 6 for kids to still be in pull-ups. After that point, we do start thinking that maybe we need to do a bit more investigating to wonder what might be happening. But some of the things that we talk about with families with overnight toilet training is, we always start, is your child dry during the day? Tackle that first, get that sorted before you worry about overnight. And then things like, is your child waking up? Sometimes are they dry? And that's a really great indicator that perhaps they're ready for this. And again, we talk about a preparation phase where we chat to the child about, we're going to think about you trying to do wheeze in the toilet overnight, and we're going to have a practice run. We'll get you in bed. We might get a night light out. This is what you can do. You can go by yourself. You can come and find mum or dad. We can help you. And we also think about accidents are going to happen?
Definitely.
And so we always talk about how we're preparing beds as well. So do we have a spare pair of pajamas that are next to the bed? Do we have 2 layers of mattress protectors?
I only saw that the other day. It might have been with you. Actually, I think it was with you guys. And I was like, That's so clever. So it was sheet, protector, sheet, protector. And I
Yeah,
was like, oh my gosh,
Whip it off.
I know. I used to, obviously whip off the sheet and, but there you go. Life-changing. Yeah.
Yes. So we just try and prepare the child as much as possible. And, I know we're reading even things like thinking about screen time before bedtime.
Yeah.
We know that can affect kids' overnight continence. And
Totally.
even once kids get to about 5, it has been suggested that you can give kids a go at seeing whether they can get dry overnight. So you might just have a test run for a week where you're, and that for some kids, because they've never had this experience, pull-ups are good.
Yes.
They are so great.
It's
you
so
do
good.
a wee and you get it gets whipped away. So
Totally.
kids don't always kind of have that opportunity to understand that they've even wet overnight. So perhaps even trying undies underneath the pull-up if your child is, getting to that later age, or having a week just to see what happens, because there are some kids, when they're given the opportunity, they start identifying some of those signs and do become dry overnight as well.
Feel, But I think that's just such imperative for everyone to hear that it's up to 5 or 6, because I think I said parents are usually like around 3 or 4, and I'm like, I think it's still pretty normal for them to have accidents and stuff like that.
Yeah, and making sure to really check out constipation isn't occurring as well. That's a huge one. And because what can happen is if there's kind of a build-up of stuff in the bowel, it can actually press on the bladder and cause like involuntary release overnight. So it actually really affects them from being able to hold overnight. It just might be just releasing. So make sure that is sorted as well.
Okay,
so lots of hydration.
Yeah. Again, that was something that I saw about trying to get water into our children. Got any tips on that?
I think one of the I always love the ones that I loved. I love as a parent, or that when I talk with parents that they love. So I think my latest favorite is where what we're trying to do, we know that our bladder is a muscle, and we need to exercise our bladder and exercise the muscle that is our bladder, and even giving the kids that kind of language to help them understand that this is a muscle that we're helping to work out. And so getting them to build up to I love adding a tiny bit of water into the bottom of a cup. You do it too. And every morning let's have this drink together, and starting with an amount that they're going to nail.
Good idea.
So only putting a little bit in. You do a cheers. So you're doing it together, and it's like this lovely moment of connection in the morning, and you have a drink. And then slowly, you increase the amount of that your child can drink in one sitting. And it's just even a nice way of starting the day, where you go, I know they've drunk a cup of water before they've even walked out the door. So when they've got their drink bottle, some of the other things that I know that families love are things like novelty straws or curly straws that we know that they can make drinking a bit fun. Having diluted juices, eating lots of really juicy fruits like watermelon and oranges. We know that they're great for their high hydration and fluid content. And is there anything else, Alex? And my brain has
that's pretty good.
Yes. Yeah, I'm going a little bit towards that nighttime toilet training as well. It's just making sure that they're actually drinking enough over the course of the day, because we often find that between childcare, school, rushing around, they're actually not really drinking much, and then they're getting to the night and they're having lots at dinner time or wanting after dinner. And it's not that we want to restrict fluids at the end of the day. We just want to make sure that they're getting enough throughout the day, so they're not
actually so
stocking up and then they're weeing overnight.
I know.
Trying to spread it out a little bit.
Okay, that's fantastic. So the other thing that I saw too, which I wanted to chat to you about like how you worded it as something that we don't really know about or talk about, is the internal senses and the you say the word.
Interoception.
Yes, there you go. It's why it's important for developing our ability to use a toilet. So I think I love all the sciencey biological part of everything. So can you explain what that means?
So interoception is one of our 8 senses. So we know, many of our external senses, just like our vision, our touch, our sight, our smell, hearing, etc. But one of our internal senses is called interoception, and it's our ability to kind of pick up what's going on within our body. So things like, are we thirsty? Do we need to go to the toilet? Are we hot? Some of our emotions. So some of those internal sensations. And in order to, I guess, master toilet training, we need to be able to kind of pick up that little wiggle within our body, that feeling of like, oh, I need to go.
Yeah.
And for some kids, like, this is a developmental skill, so it develops over time.
Really? So
yeah,
again, that's, after 2, I suppose, is it ongoing? Is it that they actually can't do it? The body's not ready hasn't developed it yet?
Yeah, and cognitively as well, like making connections, like actually identifying it and then knowing what that is. Like, am I hungry, hot, or am I busting? Don't know. So we need
I'm too busy. I don't know what to do.
So just creating opportunities for them to kind of connect some of the dots there. Yeah. So when they are wiggling their little bodies or putting their hands on their pants, you can narrate what's happening there and help them make that connection. So something like, oh, I can see you're wiggling. Maybe it's toilet time. Let's go try for a wee. So making some of those connections for them.
That's an interest. Very important as a parent, isn't it? That
super important.
Wiggling. I mean, definitely for a little boy when they put their hands down there and try and squeeze it shut. That's a pretty big indicator. But for little girls, maybe crossing their legs. But that's that wiggling's actually, I've never heard of that. So that's really interesting.
And it is even us as parents that we can help kids to identify, this is how we know that we need to go to the toilet. Yeah. So if you know that you're about to go to the toilet, you can go, oh, I can feel it in my tummy, or I can feel it that I need to go to the toilet, and just kind of cueing into
conversations.
Like, because kids don't know where is the feeling coming from. It's like, and so kind of showing them on your body, I can feel this pressure here. That means I need to go and do a wee. And so when they start getting sensations and they identify it's in that part of their body, they can make those connections that might mean a wee or a poo is coming.
Yeah. Interesting. It's so interesting, isn't it? And the thing is, we all just did it. Well, we did it. My parents did it. You just, at that age, you kind of do that and you get through it. Whereas, again, getting back to the conscious parenting with emotion, so it's emotional regulation and stuff like that, mostly for parents, but teaching them how to regulate. So rather than just expecting them to, it's like having these conversations, and don't have to be in depth, but this is the same thing, is that actually our kids are very smart, and how are they to learn if we don't tell them?
Yeah.
They end up doing it, but.
Absolutely. And, we often talk with families about, if your toddler's going to hide behind a couch because they're needing to do a poo, I'd go, do you know what? This is actually really good news.
Right.
Because it means that they're aware that something's going on and they're about to do something. And so that means their sense of interoception, so their awareness that these body cues mean something.
There you go.
This is
happening.
Good stuff. It is happening. And, and if they're starting to do that, that gives us some clues that they're identifying what those sensations mean. And maybe that means we can, instead of going behind the couch to squat and do a poo, maybe we can get them on the potty or the toilet.
So it's watching those cues. And I think, again, getting back to wanting to support, and big loves to all the mamas particularly, is we already feel guilt as soon as we fall pregnant of what we consume in our mouth. So being parents, mums, we're always feeling guilty. And I think the hardest thing is, again, mums having to go to work, wanting to go to work, and then, missing those things, or not, sort of not being able to, not missing them, but if they're not with them as much as, I don't know what I'm trying to say, every day, that when they are home, that they can see that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is, often mums aren't at home as much as they might want to be, and so.
And we are big fans of that. We are our everyday motto is we all do the best we can with the energy and resources that we have at any one time.
That's what I'm trying to say, yeah.
And that when we think about toilet training, that is the same. Like, as much as we go, are there some child readiness? Like, are they showing an interest in the toilet? All of those things. Yeah. Is there also parent readiness? Because if you've just had a new baby, that's probably not a great time. If you're moving house, not a good time. If you're just starting, just started childcare, maybe that's not a good time. There's a lot of change going on for your little human. So, and for you. So we know that it's interesting that we think that sprinkle of what we can do when we can is great. Like,
it's enough, isn't it?
It is.
But like the thing, sorry, go.
No, like we even just say, if you know you've got no time, that's okay. Like before bath time, when your child's pants are already off, can you just practice sitting on the toilet or the potty then? And do you know what? You're actually working towards toilet training, or you get your child dressed every single morning. Can you help to encourage them to get their pants up and down by themselves? Because do you know what? If you can't get your pants up and down, that's going to affect how you can toilet training or hand washing. So we know that we resonate a lot with what you're saying.
Yes, because I was trying to get it out. The guilt, what I was saying is, you've explained it exactly, is that we feel guilty because we're not there enough. But what you've just explained is it doesn't have to be that, you know, when we are all doing the best we can, and then you just do little glimmers and little sprinkles when you can, and it's still toilet training.
Yeah. Yes. Perfect. It's not that three-day intensive method like it used to be, like that's grandma might suggest, you know, just take the nappy off and take 3 days, stay home and just sit on the toilet every 2 hours.
I can do that. And that's exactly where that's all perfect conversation, because that's what I was trying to say is we already feel guilty with the lack of time. We love our children so much, but it doesn't have to be that intensive everyday toilet training. It's like those little glimmers. So that's fantastic. Yeah. So again, I could talk about this a lot longer, but we've all got to get going. But my biggest thing is to ask you guys, where can everyone get all your amazing information from? Obviously, your Instagram posts and stuff like that. But we're purchasing ebooks. You've got visual cue cards, animated videos. Tell us all about that.
Yeah, so you can find us for lots of toilet training tips on Instagram at the Independence Hub. But yes, for all our visual resources, we've got our website, theindependencehub.com.au, and we've got a variety of resources on there. So we've got our toilet training toolkit, which you can upload a picture of your child's face, and it does get put into a little animated body, and they'll get a story, an animation, and those visual cue cards for the toilet, and a toilet training guide for the parent. We've also got a bottom wiping guide that we've just released.
Ask about that.
Yeah,
that's another big thing.
It's that next thing. Yeah, exactly. And we've got so much interest in finding some tips for that. So we've got a bottom wiping guide as well that can be downloaded.
So cute. Amazing. And I will put these all the links in the notes anyway. But thank you so much for being my guests today. I found it extremely interesting and informative, and I'm sure so many people will. So everyone must, when they need to get some toilet training done, they must find you. That's what I think.
Yes.
Oh, beautiful. Well, Donna, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much. We'll speak to you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.